"Daddy, give me my leftovers, she'll cure me." The millionaire didn't believe it, but seconds later, he cries when he sees his daughter move her legs. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Marvelous Steakhouse, Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant. Robert Harrison barely noticed the storm outside as he cut another piece of Wagyu beef, his movements mechanical, distant. Across from him, 7-year-old Emma sat motionless in her custom wheelchair, her untouched plate of pasta growing cold. "Please, sweetheart, just one bite," Robert whispered, his voice cracking. The same words he'd spoken every day for the past 8 months, ever since the accident that stole his wife's life and his daughter's ability to walk. Ever since Emma stopped speaking altogether. Emma's hollow blue eyes stared past him, through him, as if she were somewhere else entirely. The doctors called it selective mutism, trauma-induced. Robert called it his daily heartbreak. "Mr. Harrison," the maitre d' approached carefully, "perhaps we could pack the young lady's meal. She seems tired tonight." Robert nodded, defeated. Another failed dinner, another evening watching his daughter fade away before his eyes, despite having access to the world's best doctors, therapists, and specialists. Money couldn't buy what Emma needed most, her voice back, her spirit back. As the server began clearing Emma's untouched plate, a small voice pierced through the restaurant's elegant ambiance. "Please, sir, I'm so hungry." Robert looked up to see a tiny figure by their table, a girl no older than Emma, but whose face bore the weight of someone much older. Her clothes were soaked through, tattered and too big for her skeletal frame. Her dark hair hung in wet tangles, and her bare feet left muddy prints on the pristine marble floor. "Security!" the maître d' hissed, but Robert raised his hand. Something about this child's eyes stopped him cold. They weren't the dull, vacant stare he'd grown accustomed to seeing in Emma. These eyes blazed with life, with an intensity that made his chest tighten. "How did you get in here?" Robert asked gently. "I followed the smell of food," the girl said simply, her gaze fixed on Emma's untouched pasta. "She's not eating it. She doesn't need it, but I do." The restaurant fell silent. Even the kitchen staff had stopped their clattering to watch this unprecedented scene unfold. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Robert asked. "Lucy." Her voice was barely above a whisper, but somehow it carried across the entire room. "And I can help her." "Help her?" Robert's throat tightened. "Help her how?" Lucy stepped closer to Emma's wheelchair, ignoring the security guards approaching from behind. She reached out one tiny dirt-stained hand toward Emma's face. "Daddy," Lucy said, her eyes never leaving Emma's. "Give me her leftovers. She will heal me, and I will heal her." Robert's blood ran cold. Emma hadn't spoken in 8 months. Yet somehow, this strange little girl had just called him Daddy, with Emma's exact voice, the voice he'd been desperately longing to hear again. Emma's head turned for the first time in months, her eyes focusing directly on Lucy's face. And then Emma smiled. The entire restaurant held its breath as Emma's smile widened, the first genuine expression of joy Robert had seen on his daughter's face since the accident. Lucy knelt beside the wheelchair, her small hand still hovering near Emma's cheek, trembling with an energy that seemed to pulse through the air itself. "Emma!" "Hadash," Robert whispered, his voice barely audible, afraid that speaking too loudly might shatter whatever miraculous spell was unfolding before his eyes. "Daddy!" Emma's voice came out like a rusty gate opening after years of neglect, each syllable a gift Robert had never thought he'd hear again. She's so hungry, Daddy." "Can't you see how hungry she is?" Tears streamed down Robert's face, hot and unstoppable, as he heard his daughter speak for the first time since that horrible night 8 months ago. The maitre d' stepped forward hesitantly, clearly torn between restaurant protocol and the extraordinary scene unfolding in his establishment, but Robert waved him back with a sharp gesture. "Give her the plate," Robert commanded, his voice thick with emotion and barely controlled desperation. "Give her everything, whatever she wants." Lucy's dark eyes lit up with gratitude as the server, his hands shaking slightly, placed Emma's untouched pasta before her. The entire restaurant staff had gathered at a respectful distance, watching this unprecedented moment with a mixture of curiosity and awe. But instead of diving in desperately as everyone expected, Lucy carefully lifted a single forkful to her mouth, chewed slowly and deliberately, then looked back at Emma with an intensity that made the air in the room feel electric. "Your turn," Lucy said simply, her voice carrying a strange authority that seemed far too mature for her tiny frame. Emma, who hadn't eaten voluntarily in weeks, who had required feeding tubes and constant coaxing just to take in basic nutrition, reached for her water glass without hesitation and took a long, satisfying sip. Then another. The colour began returning to her pale cheeks, like watercolours bleeding across wet paper. "This is medically impossible," whispered Dr. Patricia Wells, who had been dining quietly 2 tables away with her husband. She'd been Emma's neurologist for months, witnessing her complete withdrawal from the world, documenting her decline in meticulous medical notes that painted an increasingly hopeless picture. Robert noticed the doctor approaching, her professional curiosity overriding her dinner plans. "Dr. Wells, you need to see this. You need to witness what's happening here." "Mr. Harrison, I don't know what kind of coincidence or psychological trigger this is, but we should get Emma back to the hospital for comprehensive evaluation immediately," Dr. Wells said, her medical training warring with the evidence of her own eyes. "No," Emma said firmly, her voice stronger and clearer than it had been in months, carrying a conviction that stopped everyone in their tracks. "Lucy stays with me. She can't leave yet." Lucy nodded gravely, as if she'd been expecting this declaration, as if she'd heard it many times before. "I can't leave her yet, Doctor. The healing isn't finished. We've only just begun the process." Robert's mind raced like a computer processing impossible data. Every rational part of him, every piece of his Harvard MBA training, every fiber of his logical businessman's soul screamed that this was impossible. Yet he was watching his daughter come back to life before his eyes like a flower blooming in fast forward. "What kind of healing are you talking about, Doctor?" Wells demanded, her scientific skepticism battling against the undeniable evidence unfolding before her. Lucy looked up with those intense dark eyes that seemed to hold secrets far older than her apparent 7 years. The kind that doctors can't do with all their machines and medicines. The kind that costs everything you have and everything you are. Emma reached out and took Lucy's dirty, calloused hand in her own soft, pampered one, the contrast stark and somehow beautiful. "She's going to help me walk again, Daddy, but first, she needs a home. She needs safety. She needs us." Robert's world tilted on its axis, reality shifting like tectonic plates beneath his feet. His daughter was speaking in complete sentences, making direct eye contact, showing more life and vitality than she had displayed in months of the most expensive therapy money could buy. And it all started the precise moment this mysterious, impossible child appeared in their lives. As if reading his thoughts with uncanny accuracy, Lucy whispered, her voice carrying an ancient sadness. "Some gifts come with a price, Mr. Harrison. The question is, are you willing to pay it?" "What price?" Robert asked, though every parental instinct in his body told him he'd pay anything, his fortune, his business empire, his very life, to see Emma whole and happy again. Lucy glanced around the restaurant with the wariness of someone far older than her years, taking in the curious stares, the whispered conversations, the cell phones, discreetly recording what was happening. Not here. Too many eyes, too many questions that can't be answered in public. Dr. Wells stepped closer, her medical bag already in hand. Mr. Harrison, I must insist on immediate medical evaluation. What we're witnessing here defies everything we know about Emma's neurological condition, her psychological state, her physical capabilities. This could be dangerous. Dangerous? Emma's laugh was like music, the first time Robert had heard that sound since before the accident. Dr. Wells, look at me. Really look at me. When's the last time I seemed less dangerous and more alive? It was true. Emma's eyes were bright and alert, her posture straight and engaged, her color healthy and vibrant. She looked like the child she'd been before that terrible night, before the drunk driver, before the hospital, before the silence that had nearly destroyed them both. Daddy! Emma's voice was growing stronger by the minute, each word more confident than the last. Please, trust me. For once in 8 months, trust that I know what I need. Robert looked between his daughter, alert and responsive and miraculous, and this enigmatic child who claimed she could heal what the world's best doctors couldn't even explain, let alone cure. My penthouse, Robert decided, his business instincts kicking in. We'll continue this conversation there, away from prying eyes and recording devices. The drive through Manhattan's rain-soaked streets felt surreal, like moving through a dream where the familiar had become foreign. Emma chatted quietly with Lucy in the back seat of the Bentley, their conversation too low for Robert to hear, but animated enough to make his heart soar, while his mind churned with questions that had no rational answers. Miss Emma, Marcus, his driver of 12 years, said carefully, catching Emma's eyes in the rearview mirror. It's so good to hear your voice again. I've missed our conversations about books and movies. Emma squeezed Lucy's hand and smiled, actually smiled, at Marcus. Lucy gave it back to me, Marcus. She's going to give me everything back. Everything I lost, everything I thought was gone forever. At the penthouse, Robert's housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, nearly dropped her carefully prepared tea service when Emma walked through the door, not rolled in her wheelchair as she had for months, but walking on her own 2 feet, albeit unsteadily, but with determination and growing confidence. Blessed ancestors, Mrs. Chen gasped in Mandarin, her native language emerging in her shock. How is this possible? What miracle has occurred in this house? Lucy answered in perfect, fluent Mandarin, her pronunciation and tonal accuracy causing Mrs. Chen to stumble backward and nearly drop the tea tray. Ancient knowledge requires ancient respect, honored grandmother. What you witnessed tonight is older than medicine, older than science. Robert's blood chilled, as if ice water had been injected into his veins. Lucy was supposedly 7 years old, living on the streets of New York, with no formal education or family connections. How did she speak fluent Mandarin with the sophistication of a native speaker? Sit down, both of you, Robert instructed, his voice carefully controlled as he guided them to the living room's massive Italian leather sofa. Lucy, I need answers. Real, honest, complete answers. No more riddles or mysterious statements. Lucy accepted the hot chocolate Mrs. Chen offered with both hands, her small fingers wrapping around the warm mug as if it were the most precious thing she'd ever held, savoring its warmth and sweetness like someone who rarely experienced such simple pleasures. I told you, Mr. Harrison, I can heal Emma completely, not just her voice, not just her spirit, but everything, her legs, her spine, her trauma, her pain. But healing of this magnitude requires sacrifice. Real sacrifice. What kind of sacrifice are we talking about? Emma's hand tightened on Lucy's arm, a gesture of protection and solidarity. Tell him, Lucy. Tell him what you told me in the restaurant. Tell him the truth about what this means. Lucy's dark eyes met Robert's directly, unflinching and honest. For Emma to walk again, to speak again, to be completely whole again, to be the person she was meant to be before the accident stole her future. Someone else must carry her burden. What burden? Her pain, her trauma, her broken body, her damaged spirit. Lucy's voice was barely a whisper, but somehow it carried the weight of absolute truth. I take it all into myself. Every injury, every moment of suffering, every tear she's cried. But once I do, there's no going back, no undoing it, no changing our minds. Robert felt the room spinning around him, the expensive artwork and furniture blurring together. You're telling me you want to become paralyzed so my daughter can walk? You want to sacrifice your own life for hers? Not paralyzed, Lucy corrected, her voice carrying an ancient sadness. Something much worse than that. The lights flickered ominously, and somewhere in the distance thunder rolled across the city like the footsteps of giants. I need to make some calls, Robert said, stepping away from the girls and pulling out his encrypted phone. His hands shook as he dialed his head of security, a former FBI agent he trusted with his life. Thompson, I need a complete background check, immediately. Priority 1. A 7-year-old girl named Lucy. No last name yet. She's been living on the streets. I need to know everything about her. Everything. While Robert spoke in hushed, urgent tones by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, Dr. Wells arrived at the penthouse with remarkable speed, accompanied by Dr. Richard Stone, Emma's orthopedic surgeon, and Dr. Margaret Foster, a pediatric psychiatrist who had been working with Emma since the accident. Emma, sweetheart, Doctor. Wells approached cautiously, her medical bag filled with portable diagnostic equipment. Would you let us examine you? Just to understand what's happening to your body, to help us figure out how to help you better? Emma looked to Lucy for permission, a gesture that didn't go unnoticed by any of the adults in the room. Lucy nodded solemnly, as if granting royal consent to proceed. As the 3 doctors began their examination, checking reflexes, muscle tone, cognitive responses, emotional indicators, Robert watched in amazement that bordered on disbelief. Emma's reflexes, which had been sluggish and inconsistent for months, were now sharp and immediate. Her muscle tone, which had deteriorated significantly due to lack of use and psychological withdrawal, was improving visibly, hour by hour. Her spine, which had been damaged in the accident and showed signs of permanent injury on every scan, was displaying signs of regeneration. This is medically impossible, Doctor, Stone muttered, comparing Emma's current X-rays with the extensive files he'd brought from the hospital. The spinal damage from 8 months ago, the compressed vertebrae, the damaged nerve pathways, the scarred tissue. It's not just healing, it's reversing completely. How rapidly is this occurring? Is this? Robert demanded, abandoning his phone call to join the medical consultation. At this rate, Dr. Stone said, his voice filled with scientific wonder and professional confusion, she could be walking normally within days, maybe even hours. This contradicts everything we know about spinal injury recovery. Meanwhile, Lucy sat quietly on the sofa, but Robert noticed something deeply troubling. The child who had been energetic and alert in the restaurant, who had spoken with such authority and confidence, now seemed to be fading before their eyes. Her skin was growing paler by the minute, and she winced occasionally, as if experiencing waves of inexplicable pain. Robert's phone buzzed with an urgent message. Thompson's preliminary report was in, and it was disturbing. "Sir, this is highly unusual." Thompson's voice was tight with concern. No record of any child named Lucy reported missing in the past year anywhere in the tri-state area. No birth certificate, no school records, no medical records, no social services involvement. It's as if she doesn't exist in any official capacity. Everyone exists somewhere, Thompson. Keep digging. That's just it, sir. I found something else, and it's unsettling. There are reports, going back decades, scattered across different cities, different states, of a child matching her exact description appearing during unexplained medical miracles. Robert's throat went dry. What do you mean? Boston, 1987. A terminally ill boy named Michael Rodriguez recovers overnight from leukemia after meeting a mysterious girl who matches Lucy's description exactly. Phoenix, 1995. A comatose teenager named Sarah Kim wakes up after 6 months. Detroit, 2003. A little girl with cerebral palsy begins walking normally. The descriptions are identical, sir. Same height, same weight, same dark hair, same intense eyes, same apparent age. That's impossible. She'd have to be in her 30s or 40s by now. That's what makes this so disturbing, sir. And there's something else, something worse. Robert's hand tightened on the phone. What? The mysterious child disappears after each miracle. And sometimes she's found days later, in the exact condition the healed person had before their recovery, dead or dying from the same disease, the same injuries, the same conditions. The phone slipped from Robert's trembling hand, clattering across the marble floor. Across the room, Emma was standing on her own, taking confident steps toward the window, her movement fluid and natural. Behind her, Lucy collapsed to the floor, her breathing shallow and labored, her small body convulsing with pain. "Lucy!" Emma cried out, rushing back with strength and speed she hadn't possessed minutes earlier. "It's starting," Lucy whispered, her voice barely audible but somehow carrying to every corner of the room. "The transfer is beginning, but Mr. Harrison, there's something you need to know first. Something about why I chose Emma specifically." "What do you mean you chose Emma?" Robert knelt beside Lucy, whose complexion was growing ashen by the minute, her breathing becoming more labored with each passing moment. Lucy's breathing was becoming increasingly difficult, but her eyes remained sharp and focused, burning with an intensity that seemed almost supernatural. "The accident 8 months ago. Your wife, Sarah. She didn't die immediately in the crash." Robert's world stopped spinning, time freezing around him like ice. "What did you say?" Emma moved closer, her newly steady legs carrying her with growing confidence and grace. "Daddy, listen to her, please. She knows things, important things that we need to hear." "Nurse Sarah lived for 17 minutes after the crash," Lucy continued, each word seeming to cost her immense physical effort, her voice growing fainter but more urgent. "The paramedics tried everything, but her injuries were too severe. But she wasn't unconscious, Mr. Harrison. She was awake, aware, praying desperately." Tears streamed down Robert's face, hot and bitter with grief he thought he'd finally processed. "How could you possibly know that? The paramedics said she died instantly. They told me she didn't suffer." "Because I was there." Lucy's voice grew even fainter, but somehow more powerful. "I'm always there when mothers make that kind of desperate sacrifice. Sarah begged God, the universe, anyone who would listen, to save Emma's life, to give her daughter a future. She offered everything she had, everything she was, everything she would ever be." The room fell completely silent, except for the sound of Lucy's labored breathing and the storm raging outside the windows. "She prayed that someone would come to finish what she couldn't do herself," Lucy continued, her small hand reaching up to touch Emma's face. "She prayed that her love would find a way to heal her daughter completely, no matter what it cost, no matter how long it took." Dr. Wells stepped forward, her medical skepticism warring with the undeniable evidence of what she was witnessing. "Even if what you're saying were somehow true, which defies all medical and logical explanation, how does that connect to you being here now?" Lucy smiled weakly, but her smile was radiant with purpose. "Because I carry the other half of Sarah's gift. The part of her sacrificial love that didn't reach Emma in time because death interrupted the transfer. I've been searching for Emma ever since that night. waiting for the right moment, the right circumstances, to complete what her mother started. Emma gasped, her hand flying to her throat as if remembering something long buried. "Mommy, I remember now. In the hospital during the surgeries, I felt her presence. I felt her holding me, telling me that someone special would come someday, someone who would finish what she couldn't complete." Robert's legs gave out completely, and he sank into the nearest chair, his business empire and financial success meaning nothing in the face of this impossible revelation. "This is insane. You're telling me my wife somehow. What? Arranged this supernatural encounter from beyond the grave. Love doesn't die with the body, Mr. Harrison," Lucy whispered, her voice carrying the weight of ancient wisdom. "It finds a way to keep protecting what matters most. Sarah's love has been waiting 8 months, growing stronger, gathering power, preparing for this moment to complete its work." As if to prove her point, Emma was now walking normally around the room, her movements fluid and natural, testing her newfound strength and coordination. But with each step Emma took, each sign of her miraculous recovery, Lucy seemed to diminish further, as if her very life force was being transferred into Emma's healing body. "The process can't be stopped now," Lucy said, her voice growing weaker, "but you need to understand exactly what's happening. I'm not just taking Emma's physical injuries, I'm taking all of it. The trauma, the silence, the nightmares, the pain of losing her mother, the fear, the despair. Emma will be completely whole, but but you'll carry it all," Robert finished, his voice hollow with understanding and horror. Lucy nodded with great effort. "Until my body gives out completely, until the accumulated suffering of healing others throughout more than a century finally claims me. That's the price. That's always been the price I pay for this gift." Mrs. Chen rushed forward with blankets and pillows, tears streaming down her weathered face. "Sweet child, there must be another way. There must be some alternative to this sacrifice." "There isn't," Lucy said simply, but without self-pity. "But don't be sad for me. This is what I was born to do, what I've been doing for over 100 years. What gives my existence meaning and purpose." Emma knelt beside Lucy, now fully healthy and vibrant, her eyes bright with life and love. "How many times, Lucy? How many times have you done this? How many children have you saved?" Lucy's smile was radiant despite her obvious pain and rapidly declining condition. "Enough times to know it's worth every moment of suffering, every single time, without exception." Outside, the storm was intensifying dramatically, as if the very universe was responding to the supernatural exchange taking place in Robert Harrison's penthouse, the thunder and lightning creating a symphony of cosmic acknowledgement. "I need to know who you really are," Robert demanded, his voice breaking with desperation and fear. "Before this goes any further, before I watch you die in my living room, I need the complete truth about what's happening here." Lucy struggled to sit up, Emma helping support her increasingly frail form with gentle hands. The transformation was accelerating at an alarming rate. Emma looked more vibrant and healthy than she had since before the accident, her skin glowing with vitality, while Lucy appeared to be aging and deteriorating before their eyes, as if decades of suffering were catching up to her in minutes. "My name isn't Lucy," she whispered, her voice barely audible but somehow carrying to every corner of the room. "That's just what I call myself in this lifetime, in this incarnation. My real name. My birth name was Grace Morrison. I was 7 years old when I died in 1892. The room fell completely silent, except for the storm raging outside, thunder and lightning creating an apocalyptic backdrop to her impossible revelation. "I was dying of tuberculosis in a tenement building on the Lower East Side," Lucy continued, her voice growing distant with memory that spanned more than a century. "My mother, Margaret, was a seamstress, desperately poor. Working 18 hours a day for pennies, she spent her last dollar on medicine that didn't work, prayers that seemed unanswered. Dr. Wells shook her head vigorously, her scientific training rejecting every word. This is completely impossible. You're talking about being over 130 years old. The human lifespan doesn't work that way. Death changed me, Lucy explained, her breathing becoming more labored with each sentence. Instead of passing on to whatever comes after, I became something else, something between life and death. A vessel for healing others, powered by sacrificial love and sustained by purpose. Emma's eyes widened with understanding and awe. You've been doing this for over a century, saving children, healing the impossible cases, carrying their suffering. Children whose mothers prayed the same desperate prayer mine did. Children who were meant to live, meant to heal, meant to make a difference in the world. Lucy looked directly at Emma with eyes that held the accumulated wisdom and pain of more than 100 years. Special children like you. Robert's mind reeled, trying to process information that defied every rational thought he'd ever had. But why Emma specifically? There are sick children everywhere, suffering children who need miracles. Why did you choose my daughter? Because Sarah's prayer was different from all the others I've heard over the decades, Lucy said, her breathing becoming more shallow and difficult. She didn't just pray for Emma's healing, for her survival, for her recovery. She prayed for Emma to become a healer herself. She saw something in your daughter, Mr. Harrison, a gift, a destiny, a purpose that extends far beyond just living a normal life. Emma gasped, her hand flying to her chest as if something was awakening inside her. I can feel it. Ever since Lucy touched me, I can feel everyone's pain. Mrs. Chen's arthritis in her hands, Dr. Wells' chronic migraine, Marcus's back problems from his old car accident, even the doorman's grief over his wife's death last month. Lucy nodded weakly, a smile of satisfaction crossing her pale features. The healing power passes on, Emma. That's why this time is different from all the others. I'm not just healing you and then disappearing. I'm awakening your own ability to heal others. But you must understand, with great power comes great responsibility and great cost. What are you saying exactly? Robert demanded, fear creeping into his voice. Emma will have the choice I never had, Lucy explained, her voice growing fainter with each word. She can live a completely normal life, forgetting about this gift, focusing on her own happiness and success. Or she can use her abilities to help others, to heal the suffering, to make the world a better place. But if she chooses to heal, each time she saves someone, she'll take on a portion of their suffering. Not enough to kill her, as it does to me, but enough to understand true sacrifice, true empathy. Emma stood up, perfectly steady now, and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows. The city stretched out below like a vast ocean of lights, millions of individual stories, many of them filled with pain and suffering and desperate need. I want to help, Emma said quietly, her voice filled with mature determination. Like Mommy wanted me to. Like Lucy has been doing all these years, I want to use this gift. Emma, no, Robert pleaded, his parental instinct screaming against the idea. You're 7 years old. You deserve a normal childhood, a regular life, happiness without suffering. Daddy, Emma turned to face him, and Robert saw something ancient and wise flickering in his little girl's eyes, something that reminded him powerfully of Sarah's strength and compassion. Some people are born for normal lives. Others are born for purpose, for service, for making a difference. Mommy knew which one I was meant to be. Lucy smiled, her mission nearly complete, her strength almost entirely depleted. The choice is entirely yours, Emma. But know this, the power comes with certain protections. You won't die from healing others, as I eventually will. You'll simply understand suffering in a way few people ever will. And through that understanding, that empathy, you'll be able to offer something incredibly precious to the world. "What's that?" Emma asked, her voice soft with wonder. "Hope," Lucy whispered, as the last of her strength began to fade. Real hope, backed by the power to actually help. The thunder outside reached a crescendo that shook the entire building, and the lights flickered dramatically. Emma had been fully healed, but Robert was beginning to understand that the real transformation was just beginning. 3 days had passed since Lucy's sacrifice, and Emma's transformation was complete. She walked, ran, and played like any normal 7-year-old, but Robert could see the weight of her new gift in her eyes. Lucy had passed away peacefully in her sleep on the second night, her body finally succumbing to over a century of accumulated suffering. They'd buried her in Woodlawn Cemetery under the name Grace Morrison, with only Robert, Emma, and Mrs. Chen in attendance. Now Emma sat in the penthouse's main living room, staring intently at Mrs. Chen, who was preparing lunch with obvious difficulty. The elderly housekeeper's arthritis had worsened over the winter, and her gnarled hands struggled with the simplest tasks. "Daddy," Emma said quietly, never taking her eyes off Mrs. Chen. "I can feel her pain. It's like fire running through her fingers, up her arms. It hurts her to even hold a spoon." Robert approached carefully. Since Lucy's death, Emma had been unusually quiet, processing something far beyond her years. "Sweetheart, we've talked about this. You don't have to use your gift. You can just be a normal little girl." "But she's suffering," Emma said, standing up with determination, "and I can help her." Before Robert could stop her, Emma walked over to Mrs. Chen and gently placed her small hands on the older woman's swollen knuckles. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Mrs. Chen gasped as the chronic pain that had plagued her for 15 years simply vanished. Her fingers straightened, the swelling reduced, and she could move with the grace she'd possessed in her youth. "Blessed child," Mrs. Chen whispered in Mandarin, tears streaming down her face. "What have you done?" Emma swayed slightly, and Robert caught her as she stumbled. For just a moment, her small hands showed the same swelling and inflammation that had plagued Mrs. Chen, but then it faded, leaving only a lingering ache that Emma bore with remarkable courage. "I took some of her pain," Emma explained to her father. "Not all of it, not enough to cripple me, but enough to understand what she's lived with every day." Dr. Wells, who had been visiting daily to monitor Emma's condition, witnessed the entire exchange. "Emma, this is extraordinary, but you need to understand the implications. If you continue using this ability, you'll accumulate suffering from everyone you heal. Over time, that could destroy you." Emma nodded solemnly. "Lucy told me. But she also said that understanding suffering is what makes healing real. Without it, I'd just be performing tricks." That afternoon, word somehow spread through their social circle about Emma's miraculous recovery. Robert's phone rang constantly. Friends, business associates, even strangers who had heard rumors about the miracle girl in Manhattan. By evening, desperate families began appearing at their building, begging for Emma to heal their loved ones. "Mr. Harrison," the doorman called up, his voice strained. "There are 12 families in the lobby. Sick children, terminal patients, people in wheelchairs. They're saying your daughter can perform miracles." Robert looked at Emma, who was standing by the window, watching the crowd gathering on the street below. Even from 40 floors up, she could sense their pain, their desperation, their hope. "I have to help them, Daddy," Emma said simply. "That's what Mommy wanted. That's what Lucy died for." "You're 7 years old," Robert said desperately. "This isn't your responsibility." Emma turned to face him, and for a moment, Robert saw not his little girl, but something ancient and wise. Something that reminded him powerfully of Sarah's strength and Lucy's purpose. "Yes, it is," Emma said quietly. "Some people are born to be doctors, some to be teachers, some to be parents. I was born to be a healer." And healers don't get to choose who deserves help. That evening, Emma healed 6 children, a boy with leukemia, a girl with cerebral palsy, twins with cystic fibrosis, a teenager paralyzed in a diving accident, and a baby born with a heart defect. With each healing, Emma took on a portion of their suffering, not enough to kill her, but enough to understand the depth of human pain. By midnight, Emma was exhausted, but radiant. She had saved 6 lives, but Robert could see the cost in her eyes. She looked older, more burdened, carrying the weight of knowledge no child should possess. "How do you feel?" Robert asked as he tucked her into bed. "Tired," Emma admitted, "but also complete, like I'm finally doing what I was meant to do." Outside, the crowd had grown larger. Word was spreading across the city, across the internet, across the world. The miracle girl of Manhattan was real, and she was healing the impossible cases. Robert stared out at the gathering crowd and realized their quiet life was over forever. Within a week, the Harrison penthouse had become a pilgrimage site. The media dubbed Emma the Miracle Child, and her story spread across every news network, social media platform, and newspaper in the world. Robert hired additional security, but nothing could stop the desperate families who traveled from across the globe seeking healing for their loved ones. Emma handled the attention with remarkable poise for a 7-year-old, but Robert could see the toll it was taking. She was healing 20 to 30 people per day, and with each healing, she absorbed a fragment of their suffering. Dark circles appeared under her eyes, and she moved with the careful precision of someone carrying invisible wounds. "This has to stop," Dr. Wells said during one of her daily visits. "Emma's body is showing signs of accumulated stress that shouldn't be possible in a child her age. Her cellular regeneration is remarkable, but it's not infinite." Robert watched through the bulletproof windows as Emma worked in the building's lobby, which had been converted into a makeshift healing center. She moved from patient to patient with the dedication of a seasoned doctor, laying hands on the sick and taking their pain into herself. "She won't stop," Robert said helplessly. "I've tried reasoning with her, bribing her, even threatening to send her away. She says every person she doesn't heal is a life she could have saved. She's developing a messianic complex," Dr. Foster, the child psychiatrist, observed. "It's common in children who experience trauma, followed by a sense of special purpose. But Emma's case is unprecedented because her abilities are real." Mrs. Chen approached with tea, her movements graceful and pain-free, thanks to Emma's healing. "The child carries the weight of the world," she said sadly. "I see it in her eyes, the same look her mother had when she spoke of helping others." That evening, a representative from the Vatican arrived, Cardinal Michael Romano, sent by the Pope himself to investigate Emma's abilities. Robert met with him privately in his study. "Mr. Harrison," the Cardinal said, his English heavily accented with Italian, "what your daughter is doing, it defies natural law. The Church has documented 3 confirmed healings that we cannot explain medically. We need to understand if this is divine intervention or something else." "Does it matter?" Robert asked tiredly. "She's helping people. She's saving lives." "It matters because miracles come with responsibilities," Cardinal Romano replied gravely. "If Emma is truly blessed with divine power, then she may be destined for something far greater than healing individuals. But we must also consider the possibility that this power comes from a different source entirely." That night, Robert found Emma sitting on her bedroom floor, surrounded by letters from families around the world. Thousands of desperate pleas for help, photographs of sick children, medical records, and heartbreaking stories of suffering. "I can't help them all, Daddy," Emma said, her voice breaking. "There are too many. Every letter I read, I feel their pain. Every photograph, I see what's wrong with them. It never stops." Robert knelt beside his daughter, seeing clearly for the first time how much she had sacrificed for her gift. Maybe you're not supposed to help everyone. Maybe being human means accepting that you can't save the whole world. But Mummy's prayer wasn't for me to help some people, Emma replied, holding up a letter from a mother in Bangladesh whose son was dying of malnutrition. It was for me to become a healer. Real healers don't choose who lives and who dies based on convenience. Outside, protesters had joined the crowds. Some believed Emma was a saint, others thought she was a fraud, and still others claimed she was dangerous, that her powers were unnatural and should be stopped. The city had assigned police barriers and crowd control, but the situation was becoming increasingly volatile. "Mr. Harrison," Thompson called on the secure line, "we have a problem. There are reports of other children around the world claiming to have similar abilities. Some appear to be legitimate, others are clearly hoaxes, but all of them are pointing to Emma as their inspiration." Robert's heart sank. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying Emma's healings may have awakened something global. And not everyone who wants to use these abilities has good intentions." That night, as Emma finally fell asleep from exhaustion, Robert made a decision that would change everything. He called a press conference for the following day. It was time to take control of the narrative before Emma's gift destroyed them both. But he had no idea that someone had been watching Emma's every move, someone who understood exactly what she was and what she represented, someone who had been waiting over a century for another child like her to appear. Someone who intended to claim Emma's power for themselves. The press conference was scheduled for noon, but by sunrise, Manhattan's financial district was in chaos. Over 10,000 people had gathered outside the Harrison building, some seeking healing, others protesting, and many simply curious about the most famous child in the world. Robert stood in his study, reviewing his prepared statement, when Marcus burst through the door without knocking, something the dignified driver had never done in 12 years of service. "Mr. Harrison, we have a serious problem," Marcus said, his usually calm demeanor shattered. "There's another child downstairs. She's claiming to have the same abilities as Miss Emma, and she's healing people." Robert's blood turned to ice. "What do you mean, another child?" "A girl, maybe 8 or 9 years old, blonde hair, blue eyes. She appeared in the crowd about an hour ago and started laying hands on people. The media is going crazy. They're calling her the second miracle and comparing her to Miss Emma." Through the windows, Robert could see the crowd's attention was divided. Half was still focused on the building where Emma was preparing for the press conference, but the other half had surrounded a small figure at the edge of the square. Emma appeared in the doorway, already dressed for the press conference but looking troubled. "Daddy, something's wrong. I can feel her from up here and she's different." "Different how?" "When I heal people, I take their pain into myself." "But she's not taking anything, she's just making it disappear, like it never existed." Emma's eyes widened with understanding and fear. "That's not how real healing works. Pain doesn't just disappear. It has to go somewhere." Dr. Wells arrived with Thompson and a team of security experts, all looking grim. "Robert, we need to cancel the press conference. The situation downstairs is getting out of control, and this new child is raising questions we can't answer." "What kind of questions?" Thompson pulled up footage on his tablet. "Watch this. The new girl, she's calling herself Angel, has healed 12 people in the past hour. But look at their faces after the healing." Robert watched in horror as the video showed people walking away from Angel with blank, emotionless expressions. They were physically healed, but something essential seemed to be missing from their eyes. "It's like she's removing their ability to feel anything," Dr. Wells observed. "Physical pain, but also joy, love, fear, everything that makes them human." Emma gripped Robert's arm. "Daddy, she's not healing them. She's stealing their humanity and making people think it's a miracle." Before Robert could respond, the building's intercom crackled to life. "Mr. Harrison, this is Detective Sarah Martinez, NYPD. We need to speak with you immediately. There's been a development." Minutes later, Detective Martinez and her partner were in Robert's study, their expressions grave. "Mr. Harrison, we've been investigating missing person reports connected to healing miracles around the world. What we've found is disturbing." She spread photographs across Robert's desk. Boston last month, a child matching the description of Angel appeared at a children's hospital. 17 patients were healed overnight. 3 days later, all 17 were found dead, not from their original illnesses, but from what appears to be complete emotional shutdown. Robert's hands shook as he looked at the photographs. "You're saying this child is killing people?" "We're saying that whatever she's doing isn't healing," Detective Martinez replied. "It's extraction. She's removing pain, but she's taking something vital with it." Emma stepped forward, her young face set with determination that reminded Robert powerfully of Sarah. "She's coming here, isn't she? She wants to challenge me." "Challenge you how?" Robert asked. "Lucy told me there would be others who learned to manipulate healing power for selfish purposes. False healers who take from people instead of giving to them." Emma looked out the window at the crowd below. "Angel isn't here to help people. She's here to prove she's stronger than I am." As if summoned by Emma's words, the intercom crackled again. This time a child's voice filled the room, sweet, innocent, and utterly terrifying. "Emma Harrison," the voice said, "I know you can hear me. My name is Angel, and I've come to show the world what real power looks like. You take on suffering like a martyr, but I eliminate it completely. Which one of us do you think they'll choose?" The room fell silent, except for the sound of the crowd outside, growing louder and more agitated by the minute. Emma walked to the intercom and pressed the response button. "I'll meet with you," she said simply. "But not here, and not with all these people watching. This isn't about showing off, it's about helping people." Angel's laugh was like crystal breaking. "Oh, Emma, you still don't understand, do you? It was never about helping people, it was always about power. And I'm going to show you just how powerful I really am." The transmission cut off, leaving them in stunned silence. Outside, the crowd began to chant Angel's name, their voices growing louder and more frenzied. Robert realized with growing horror that his daughter was about to face something far more dangerous than fame or media attention. She was about to face a twisted reflection of herself, and he had no idea how to protect her from it. The confrontation came at midnight in Central Park. Away from the media circus and desperate crowds, Emma had insisted on meeting Angel alone, but Robert followed at a distance with Thompson and a small security team, staying hidden among the trees. Angel stood in the center of Bethesda Fountain Plaza, her blonde hair gleaming under the streetlights. She was beautiful in an otherworldly way, but there was something cold and predatory in her blue eyes that made Robert's skin crawl. "You came," Angel said as Emma approached. "I wasn't sure you'd have the courage." "I'm not afraid of you," Emma replied, though Robert could see her small hands trembling. "I want to understand what you are and why you're hurting people." Angel's laugh echoed across the empty plaza. "Hurting people? I'm freeing them from suffering just like you do. The only difference is that I'm better at it." "No," Emma said firmly. "When I heal someone, I take their pain into myself. That's how real healing works. Suffering doesn't disappear, it just moves to someone willing to bear it. But you're making pain vanish completely, and that's impossible without destroying something essential." "You're so naive," Angel said, beginning to circle Emma like a predator. "Do you want to know what I really am? Do you want to know why I can do things you can't?" Emma stood her ground. "Tell me." Angel's form began to shimmer and change, her childlike appearance wavering like a mirage. "I'm what Lucy could have become if she'd been smart instead of selfless. I'm what you could become if you stopped playing martyr and started taking what you deserve. The air around Angel grew cold, and Robert could see his breath misting in the suddenly frigid night air. Lucy and I were connected, Emma. We both died as children. Both came back with healing power. But while she chose to sacrifice herself over and over, I learned to feed off the suffering of others. Every person I heal, I take their capacity for pain, but also their capacity for love, joy, and hope. I consume their humanity and grow stronger. Emma gasped. You're not a healer at all. You're a parasite. I'm evolution, Angel snarled, her beautiful mask slipping to reveal something ancient and hungry underneath. Lucy wasted over a century playing saint, dying and returning, never learning that power is meant to be kept, not given away. But you, Emma, you have something she never did. What? You have the ability to heal without dying. Lucy's gift was to transfer suffering completely, which eventually killed her. But your mother's prayer changed the rules. You can heal others while keeping yourself alive and strong. Do you have any idea how valuable that makes you? Robert's heart stopped as he understood Angel's true purpose. You want to steal Emma's power, he whispered to Thompson. Angel's enhanced hearing caught his words. Not steal, Mr. Harrison. Merge. If I can absorb Emma's healing ability and combine it with my own power to consume suffering, I'll become something unprecedented. A being who can heal or destroy at will, who can grant miracles or inflict curses, who can play God with human lives. Emma stepped backward, but Angel moved faster than humanly possible, grabbing Emma's wrists. The process is simple, Angel hissed. I drain your power while simultaneously transferring all the suffering I've consumed over the decades into your body. You'll die carrying the accumulated pain of thousands of people, and I'll become the most powerful being on Earth. Let go of her! Robert shouted, breaking cover and running toward them. But as Angel's hands tightened on Emma's wrists, something unexpected happened. Instead of draining Emma's power, Angel began to convulse and scream. What's happening? Angel shrieked. This isn't possible. Emma's eyes blazed with understanding. Lucy didn't just give me her healing power, she gave me her protection. You can't steal a gift that was freely given through sacrificial love. Angel's beautiful facade began to crumble, revealing something twisted and monstrous underneath. No! I've planned this for decades. I've consumed thousands of people preparing for this moment. And that's exactly why you can't have my gift, Emma said, her voice carrying an authority far beyond her years. Real healing power can only exist in someone willing to sacrifice for others. You've spent so long taking from people that you've forgotten how to give. Angel's form began to unravel completely. The stolen humanity she'd consumed over the years pouring out of her like smoke. This isn't over, she screamed as she dissolved. There are others like me, others who understand that power is meant to be taken, not given away. As Angel vanished into the night air, the temperature returned to normal, and the oppressive feeling of wrongness lifted from the park. Emma collapsed into Robert's arms, exhausted but triumphant. It's not over, Daddy. Angel was just the beginning. There are others out there who want to steal healing power for selfish purposes. What do we do? Robert asked. Emma looked up at him with eyes that held the wisdom of someone far older than 7. We do what Lucy did. We help people, one at a time, and we protect the gift by using it the right way. As they walked home through the empty park, Robert realized that his daughter's greatest battle wasn't behind them, it was just beginning. 2 weeks after the confrontation with Angel, Emma's life had settled into a new rhythm, but the world around her had not. Reports of false healers appeared daily, people claiming to have miraculous abilities, some sincere but deluded, others deliberately fraudulent, and a few genuinely dangerous like Angel had been. Emma now worked from a specially converted floor of the Harrison building, healing patients in a controlled environment with medical supervision. Dr. Wells had established protocols to monitor both Emma's health and the long-term effects of her healings on patients. "Your cellular regeneration is remarkable, Doctor," Wells explained during Emma's morning examination. "The suffering you absorb from patients causes temporary damage to your body, but you heal completely within hours. It's as if your cells have been programmed to handle infinite suffering without permanent harm." Emma nodded, already dressed and ready for the day's patients. "Lucy told me the gift comes with protections. I can feel the pain, understand it, carry it for a while, but it doesn't destroy me like it would a normal person." "Still," Dr. Wells cautioned, "we're monitoring 37 patients you've healed over the past month. So far, all show complete recovery with no side effects, but we need to be certain there are no long-term consequences." Robert watched from the observation window as Emma prepared for her first patient of the day, a 5-year-old boy with brain cancer whose parents had traveled from Japan seeking her help. The waiting list now extended over 6 months, and families from around the world had relocated to New York, hoping for a miracle. "Mr. Harrison," Thompson approached with his daily security briefing, "we've had 3 more incidents overnight. A woman in Miami claiming to be Emma's spiritual sister bilked families out of $50,000 before disappearing. A man in Los Angeles was arrested for attempted fraud after claiming Emma had given him healing powers through a sacred vision. And most concerning, there are reports of organized groups forming around the idea that Emma represents the beginning of a new stage of human evolution." Robert rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of responsibility that came with having the world's most famous child. "What kind of groups? Some religious, some scientific, but others. Others believe that Emma and children like her should be studied, controlled, or even replicated through genetic manipulation." The implications chilled Robert to the bone. "Are you saying someone might try to kidnap Emma?" "I'm saying that power like Emma's doesn't go unnoticed by people who collect powerful things," Thompson replied grimly. Later that afternoon, Cardinal Romano returned with a formal delegation from the Vatican. They met in Robert's private conference room, while Emma continued her healing work. "Mr. Harrison," Cardinal Romano began, "the Church has completed its preliminary investigation. We have documented 43 cases of medically impossible healings performed by your daughter with full medical verification and no logical explanation other than divine intervention." "And?" Robert asked, sensing more was coming. "The Pope wishes to meet Emma personally. He believes she may be blessed with a gift not seen since the biblical era. However, he also wants to discuss the Church's role in protecting her from those who would exploit her abilities." Dr. Foster, the child psychiatrist, leaned forward. "Cardinal, with respect, Emma is still a 7-year-old child processing extraordinary trauma and responsibility. Any decision about her future must prioritize her psychological well-being." "Of course," Cardinal Romano agreed, "but we must also consider that Emma's gift may be intended for purposes beyond individual healing. The ancient texts speak of healers who appear during times of great suffering to prepare humanity for significant change." Before Robert could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the building. Thompson's voice crackled over the intercom. "Code Red. Unknown aircraft approaching the building. All personnel to secure positions immediately." Through the conference room windows, they could see 3 black helicopters circling the building, unmarked but clearly military. "Mr. Harrison!" A new voice came over the building's PA system, authoritative and cold. "This is Director Sarah Chen of the Department of Enhanced Human Research. We need to speak with you immediately regarding your daughter's abilities." Robert's blood froze. "Enhanced Human Research? Thompson, what department is that?" "It doesn't exist in any government directory I can access." Thompson replied over the intercom. "But the helicopters are real, and they're not leaving." Emma's voice suddenly filled the conference room through the internal communication system. "Daddy, I can feel them. The people in those helicopters, they're not here to help. They want to take me away and study me like a laboratory animal." Cardinal Romano stood up, his face grave. "Mr. Harrison, the Church has protected individuals with extraordinary gifts for centuries. We have safe houses, secure locations, resources that even governments cannot access." "You're talking about taking Emma into hiding," Robert said. "I'm talking about protecting her until she's old enough to choose her own path," the Cardinal replied. "These people, whoever they are, see Emma as a resource to be controlled. They don't understand that her gift only works through free will and sacrificial love." Through the windows, the helicopters were landing on the building's roof, and Robert could see armed figures in tactical gear preparing to enter the building. Emma appeared in the doorway, her small face set with determination that reminded Robert of both Sarah and Lucy. "Daddy," she said simply, "we need to go. Now. These people don't understand what I am, and they'll destroy my gift trying to replicate it." As footsteps echoed in the hallway outside, growing closer by the second, Robert realized that Emma's quiet life as a healer was over. Whatever came next would determine not just their future, but possibly the future of everyone Emma might have saved. The door to the conference room flew open, and armed figures in black tactical gear streamed in, their weapons trained on the small group. "Nobody move," the lead figure commanded. "By authority of the Enhanced Human Research Division, this building is now under federal jurisdiction." Emma stepped forward, her 7-year-old voice carrying impossible authority. "You can take me," she said simply, "but you'll never understand what I really am, and without understanding, my gift will die." The final confrontation was about to begin. The lead tactical officer, a stern woman with steel-grey eyes, stepped forward and removed her helmet. "I'm Director Sarah Chen. Emma Harrison, you're coming with us for evaluation and testing. Your abilities represent a significant advancement in human evolution that must be understood and controlled." Emma stood perfectly still, her small hand slipping into Robert's. "What kind of testing?" "Medical scans, genetic analysis, psychological evaluation, and controlled experiments to determine how your healing abilities can be replicated and weaponized for national security purposes." Cardinal Romano moved protectively in front of Emma. "Director Chen, this child is under Vatican protection. The Church recognizes her gift as sacred, not scientific." "The Vatican has no jurisdiction here," Director Chen replied coldly. "Emma's abilities could revolutionize medicine, create super soldiers, or provide advantages in biological warfare. She's a national asset now." Emma looked up at her father, her eyes bright with understanding that seemed impossible for someone so young. "Daddy, they don't understand. They think my gift is something that can be taken apart and put back together like a machine." "Maybe they're right," Robert said desperately. "Maybe if they study you, they can help other children without you having to suffer." Emma shook her head sadly. "That's what Angel thought too. That's what everyone thinks, who doesn't understand how love works." Director Chen gestured to her team, and they moved closer with restraint devices designed for a child. "Emma, you can come voluntarily or we can use sedatives, but you're coming with us either way." "Stop," Emma said, her voice carrying an authority that froze everyone in the room. As she spoke, something extraordinary happened. Every person in the room, the tactical officers, Director Chen, Cardinal Romano, Dr. Wells, even Robert, suddenly felt what Emma felt. The accumulated suffering of everyone she'd ever healed flowed through them like a tidal wave of human pain. They experienced the agony of the boy with leukemia, the despair of parents watching their children die, the physical torture of cancer, the emotional devastation of loss, the crushing weight of hopelessness that Emma had been carrying for weeks. Several of the tactical officers collapsed to their knees, overwhelmed by the intensity of suffering that Emma absorbed daily. Director Chen's face went white as she experienced the full emotional cost of Emma's gift. "This is what healing really costs," Emma said, her 7-year-old voice carrying the wisdom of someone who had touched the deepest wells of human suffering. "Every person I heal, I take their pain into myself. Not forever, because I'm protected by love, but long enough to understand what they've endured." She walked over to Director Chen, who was struggling to breathe under the weight of psychic suffering. "You want to replicate my gift? You want to create healing weapons? Then you need to understand that real healing can only come from someone willing to suffer for others. It can't be forced, manufactured, or controlled." Emma gently placed her small hand on Director Chen's forehead, and instantly the crushing weight of borrowed suffering lifted from everyone in the room. But the memory remained, the knowledge of what Emma willingly carried every day. "My mother prayed for me to become a healer," Emma continued, her voice growing stronger. "Lucy died to complete that prayer, but they didn't pray for me to become a weapon or a tool or a laboratory experiment. They prayed for me to help people through love, not force." Director Chen stood up slowly, her professional composure shattered. How do you live with that much pain?" "Because it's not really mine," Emma explained. "When I take someone's suffering, I'm just holding it temporarily. Love is stronger than pain. Hope is stronger than despair, and healing is stronger than hurting. The pain passes through me, but the love stays." Robert knelt beside his daughter, seeing her clearly for the first time since this all began. "Emma, you don't have to carry this burden alone. We can find another way." "There isn't another way, Daddy," Emma said gently. "This is what I was born to do, but I don't have to do it the way everyone else wants me to." She turned to address the entire room. "I won't go with the government to become a weapon. I won't hide with the church to become a symbol, and I won't perform miracles for crowds to become a spectacle." "Then what will you do?" Cardinal Romano asked. Emma smiled, and for the first time in weeks, she looked like a normal 7-year-old child. "I'm going to help people one at a time, quietly, the way Lucy did for over a century. Without cameras, without crowds, without anyone trying to control or study or worship me." Director Chen shook her head. "We can't allow someone with your abilities to operate without oversight." "You can't stop someone with my abilities from operating without love," Emma corrected. "Try to force me, study me, control me, and the gift will simply disappear. It only works through free will and sacrificial love." She walked to the window and looked out at the city spreading endlessly in all directions. "There are millions of people out there who are suffering, who need help, who have lost hope. I can't save them all, but I can save some of them. And maybe, if I do it right, I can teach others to help too." Emma turned back to face the room full of adults who had been trying to decide her fate. "I choose to heal because I choose to love. That's the only way it can work. That's the only way it's ever worked." Director Chen looked at her tactical team, then at Emma, then slowly holstered her weapon. "Stand down," she ordered quietly. "We're leaving." "Director?" one of her officers questioned. "You can't weaponize love," Director Chen said, her voice thick with understanding. "And you can't control someone whose power comes from choosing to sacrifice for others." As the government team filed out, Cardinal Romano approached Emma. "The church's offer stands. We can protect you, provide resources, help you reach more people." "Thank you," Emma said politely, "but protection isn't what I need. Understanding is." After everyone had left, Emma sat with Robert in the quiet of their home. "Daddy, are you disappointed that I won't be normal?" Robert pulled his daughter close, feeling the weight of her extraordinary destiny, but also the warmth of her purely human heart. Emma, your mother would be so proud of who you've become. You're not just healing people's bodies, you're healing their hope. Outside, the city continued its endless rhythm, millions of lives intersecting in countless ways. Somewhere out there, people were suffering, people were losing hope. People needed to be reminded that love was stronger than pain. And somewhere out there, a 7-year-old girl with her father's business sense and her mother's compassionate heart was getting ready to change the world, one healing at a time, in the quiet way that real miracles happen, through love, sacrifice, and the simple choice to help others, no matter what it costs. Emma Harrison had found her calling. The world would never be the same.